So my hope tonight is to have a conversation about what's happening in the world of climate action, what's happening in our environmental challenges. And in doing so, I'm not going to talk about the problem statement, because I'm going to make the case, as the rabbi said, that the scientists are the prophets of our time, and that they bring forth a warning based on evidence and data, as well as the spiritual essence of faith, that something profound is changing. And in that conversation, my hope is to give you a sense of optimism that our actions are making a difference and that we can move forward together. We had the most historic, successful year for climate and environmental action in Washington state history this year, in the Washington state legislature. So let's talk a little bit about the impact. So we know that we're seeing dramatic impact. 10 years ago, we as a state spent about $5 million per year in our state budget to fight forest fires. And now we spend about close to $100 million in a biennium in less than 10 years. We know that Washington state used to be the premier state in the nation for oysters and other shellfish along the coast. Ocean acidification has completely transformed that industry and that ecosystem. Some of the strongest, most passionate advocates in the business community for climate action is the shellfish industry. Some of the biggest corporations in the world are some of the most passionate for climate action because they are the yellow canary in seeing ocean acidification. We know, of course, that our resident orcas are starving because they favor Chinook, and Chinook are in short supply for a variety of reasons, but water quality and other issues are central to that. We know that there are increasing rates of asthma around the world. We know that communities of color and disproportionate impacts associated with pollution is irrefutable. So we know the problem statement. And so what have we done? So the building blocks of this package were 4 major bills that passed and a 5th that did not. First of all, 100% clean electricity. That's sweeping, unprecedented legislation that we'll talk about that passed. The strongest 100% clean energy bill in the nation, and I'm incredibly proud that that passed. That shuts down coal, and it moves us toward an integrated modern system of renewable energy, of wind, hydro, solar, and components of our existing nuclear infrastructure as well. Number 2 is energy efficiency in buildings and appliances. Large businesses, large buildings, downtown office buildings account for a substantial portion of carbon emissions. We created one of the strongest energy efficiency requirements in the nation, and we're setting goals for more than goals. 10 years out, we're changing all the codes, and we're providing a transition plan for those folks in the 10-year. We're also moving forward and adopted the strictest appliance efficiency standards, matching California, Vermont, and a few other states. So that means that the appliances that we use every day, as you can imagine, add up. Very, very substantial. Hydrofluorocarbons, HFCs, are basically the chemicals in our refrigerators, and they have a very high potency of carbon emissions. They account for a substantial amount, and that was, as you can imagine, something that was lobbied by the industry very hard not to do because it cost them money, and we're very proud of that sweeping legislation. And the 4th is the challenge of electrification of transportation sector, which accounts for an overwhelming, for about 45% of our overall carbon emissions. So we had a number of bills associated with electrification of transportation around sales tax issues associated with electric vehicles, lots of support for public infrastructure around charging infrastructure, and many other policies to try to match. Our good friends in Norway, 53% of every vehicle sold in Norway is now an electric vehicle. So the public infrastructure strategies are best practices and are proven very effective.